What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. And I haven't posted a video on this channel in over 7 months, so I thought it'd be a good time to check in with everybody, let you know what I was up to towards the second half of 2025, as well as my plans going forward into 2026. So first thing is I'm excited to let everybody know I am back to streaming. So instead of streaming poker, though, I will be streaming video games. So the games I'll be mostly focusing on are the American football games between Madden and college football. Because I'm transitioning from doing poker content to gaming content, I will be rebranding my channels. So for YouTube, I will still have two separate channels. So I will still have this David K Poker channel, which will only be poker related content. And then I will have a gaming channel. And then for all my other social networks, such as Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, I'll be updating my handle to DavidK28. If you're interested in following along my gaming content, if you don't already follow me on those social platforms, I'll have a link in the description below. Now, the first question I'm sure some of you have is why video games and not poker? And the reason is I don't know how much poker I'm going to be playing in 2026 because of the tax law changes that are taking place here in the US. So before I get into the tax situation, first thing I just want to be very clear is I'm not a tax professional and this is not tax advice. Nobody should be making any changes to what they're doing in 2026 and how they're handling their gambling taxes based on what some random guy posting a video on YouTube says, just like how I'm not going to change my plans based on some random comment in the chat here as well. So with that disclaimer out of the way, pretty much what's been going on here is in July of 2025, there was an amendment announced that was going to change how gambling taxes work going forward starting in 2026. And you're only going to be able to write off 90% of your losses. So basically, if you win $1,000 and lose $1,000, you can only write off 900 of that $1,000 loss, and then that'll have an impact on your taxes and how much you have to pay at the end of the year. Now, the huge issue that I have is that, and from my perspective, is I don't believe it's clear of what's considered wins and losses. So if you could do daily logs where you just track each day how much you win or lose, that amount wouldn't end up being that significant. It wouldn't be good. Obviously, you pay more in taxes, but it's something that I would be fine with playing still. The other end of my concern would be is that it has to be more of like every bet that's made or like a transaction log where it's every small transaction. And those numbers are super substantial. And pretty much like anybody that's playing online poker, if they had to use those numbers, like it's just not going to work out with the taxes. As you can guess, this has a massive impact on my outlook of playing online poker for a living and how I'm going to proceed going forward. So with the current situation of having the 90% deduction, as well as not having a clear guidance on how wins and losses work, I've decided that I'm not comfortable playing online poker in that environment, so I will not be playing any online poker. Now, with that said, I'm still hopeful that one of two things will happen. First thing is that the 90% deduction gets taken away, or we get a clarification how exactly poker would work. So the tough thing is that with some forms of gambling, it seems to be pretty clear that you have to do like more of like the transaction log where it's each bet's independent. Whereas some forms of gambling, it seems like you can do daily logs. Unfortunately, from what I can see, it doesn't seem like there's a clear calling for poker. So that's why I'm not comfortable playing in the current environment. Now, what happens next is really difficult to make a decision with that information because there's a chance it could be overturned next week, or there's a chance it might never be, or somewhere in between. What I've decided to do, given the current situation, is I'm effectively taking a 15-month gap, similar to how people would take gap years to see how this all plays out. So my plans for the 15-month gap is, first of all, I'm just setting aside all the money I would need to cover my living expenses for 15 months. The reason I've chosen 15 months is for two reasons. One, it's an amount I'm comfortable with doing. And second of all, I think by then I would at least have an idea of if this is something that's going to come back or it's not, because in 15 months, that's when like the first tax season would be here. And then therefore, from my perspective, would seem like when Congress would have this overturned by, if there's any urgency to get it done. Now, over these 15 months, when I say a gap, it doesn't mean I'm just going to be doing nothing, right? It's going to be pursuing one of two things. So to start out here, as long as the current laws stay in place, I'm going to be splitting my time between gaming, streaming, as well as playing live poker. How much of each, I don't really know. We'll see how the year plays out. I'm super excited to jump back into streaming. So at first, I'll probably do tons of gaming streaming at the beginning. And then as the year goes on, try to see how I would divide my time between streaming video games versus playing live poker. The reason I'm comfortable to play live poker is that I think it's pretty clear the only way you can really track live poker is by using daily logs, right? There's not like every microtransaction being logged. And the only way you can even do it in good faith is purely based on day. So that's why I'm comfortable playing live poker as opposed to my concerns with online poker. In this scenario where 15 months passes by and the tax laws aren't changed, I will probably go in one of two directions. First of all, if the gaming streaming is taking off, I'm really enjoying it and I'm able to make a living from it, or I feel like I'm close to being able to make a living from it, that is something that I would try to pursue full time. If that's not the case, after those 15 months, my plan is to basically just continue playing live poker, but start applying for more traditional 9-to-5 jobs. I did work traditional 9-to-5 jobs for about 6 years before I played online poker for a living. Those of you that have been following my content for 5 years, you probably know that sharing my results has always been a huge part of my channel. So because this may be the end of my online poker career, I decided it'd be a good time to kind of recap all the results, catch you guys up to date from the last 5 months included. So below here, you can see all my results from 2021 through 2025 playing online poker. Before I kind of break them down, two things to point out here. First of all, this is only my online poker earnings in profit. This does not include any other income sources that I had. So for example, I was sponsored with PokerStars for 2.5 years. I worked a 9-to-5 job for the first 8 months of 2021. And I also had income coming from Twitch and YouTube revenue sources. Second thing is the number of hours played. I think a lot of times people don't understand that when you're a professional poker player, especially as a content creator, the hours you play is not the only hours you're working, right? Even just from the poker perspective, you're probably going to be studying on top of that as well. And then from my end, I was spending quite a bit of hours on content. So streaming is relatively easy. You kind of just like set up the stream and do some tweaks here and there, but not too many hours into setting that up. But the thing that took up a lot of my time was editing videos. So from like mid 2020 through 2023, I probably averaged about 10 hours of editing videos every single week. And then 24 and 25 became a lot less. Also, I traveled for live events, probably somewhere around like 4 to 6 weeks each year, which wouldn't be accounted in for the hours either. For my overall results from the 5 years, you can see that I had a total profit of $325,000, which averaged out to about $65,000 per year. And from a financial end, I was really happy with these numbers. You know, I'm pretty fortunate that the city I live in, the cost of living is pretty low and it's below the national average in the United States. Also, my lifestyle in general is not too expensive. So $65,000 is more than I spend every year. So even just purely from my online poker results over the 5 years, I was able to cover my expenses plus have some money left over. If we take a look at breaking it down year by year, you can see 2021 and 2022 were my highest earning years. I think one big part of that was just that we had just launched regulated online poker in Michigan. We were just coming out of the COVID lockdowns. It was just kind of like right place, right time. So the quality of the games in 2021 and 2022 were just incredibly good. And so even though the next 3 years my earnings went down, I would definitely say I'm a much better poker player today than I was then. But as you guys know in poker, it's equally as important how good you are versus your opponents. So if your opponents are getting significantly better, that's definitely going to have an impact on your earnings. And then if you look at 2025 was my lowest total earning year, but actually results-wise, I was really happy with the year. In large part, if you look at that hours number, you'll see I did not play many hours this year. So I went from playing, you know, the previous 3 years, about 1,500 hours a year, down to playing under 1,000. And basically over the last 9 months, once I stopped streaming, I pretty much worked part-time. So not only was I playing less hours, I wasn't doing like any video editing or anything. And that was kind of at least initially planned, as after streaming for 5 years, you know, it just was a kind of a natural break to take for a few months. And then the last 6 months of the year, admittedly, I was just really demotivated with the upcoming tax change. And I didn't have that same like drive to grind like I used to, just not feeling like I had really like medium to long-term goals anymore. So that ended up changing where I did not play too many hours. Now you can see though, my hourly went up pretty good compared to the previous 2 years. So that was one thing I was happy with. And if anything, I feel more confident in my ability to make a living playing online poker in 2025, as long as I put in the full-time hours, better so than I did after 23 and 24. A big reason why I'm feeling more confident about my ability to make a living playing online poker after 2025 is my results playing on versus off stream. So if you guys remember back in April, I stopped streaming, and a huge part of that was I just felt like I could probably have better results playing off stream. So I got a chance to kind of test both out, and although they're not huge sample sizes, the drastic difference between on stream, off stream was pretty big. So you can take a look here. I played about equal number of hours on stream versus off stream. And my hourly on stream was only $31 an hour, and my hourly off stream was $65 an hour. Now, my guess is the gap is not truly this big. So unfortunately, it's not a perfect apples to apples comparison. The on-stream did include a lot of tournaments in 2025, but even if we look at like 23 and 24, hourly kind of hanging out around $40. And then also off-stream, there's a new site that launched in Michigan that had really good rakeback. So that helped with the earnings as well. But having a chance to play about 500 hours on stream and 500 hours off stream this year, I definitely came away feeling like I can have a significantly better hourly if I'm playing off stream as opposed to on stream. So as I wrap up today's video, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody that supported all of my content over the 5 years. You know, without your guys' support, I never would have quit my job to pursue poker and streaming full time. And although it's really sad that, you know, potentially the poker side of what I'm doing is coming to an end, I am so excited to jump back into streaming in 2026. And I hope you guys have a great year ahead.